Good evening, everyone. My name is Kim Cuomo, and I'd like to welcome you back to another Tech Talk in our series sponsored by Seismic. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Chris Schiro to give us a brief talk on AI in bioinformatics. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Kim. And I would also like to thank Seismic for sponsoring this tech talk. All right. So here I am. I'm here today to talk about AI and biotech, um, where the digital and biological worlds converge. Um, so think of DNA as code, and specifically like if it were base for sequence of some sort. And within that sequence, there are 4 nucleotides that create billions of combinations. And if you could think of also genes as functions, each gene basically codes for different proteins, which all have different functions. And if you can think of like a genome as like a code base, it's a very large code base, 3 billion base pairs to be precise. And if you can imagine like having to debug something like that, that would be insane. And you have no copilot to debug. So DNA is quite immense. All right. And a brief history about uh, genomics. Um, so essentially, the first big discovery that happened in genomics was in 1953. It was, if you know who like Watson and Crick are, they were the first ones to really find the structure, and that was based on this one very important woman in science, actually, Rosalind Franklin, who first imaged the double helix structure. And then in 2003, an even crazier project had undergone, and that started actually in 1993. It took 10 years to complete the whole human genome. And before that, we had never once sequenced an entire genome. And that was a pivotal moment. And it took 50 years to get to that moment. So, and then that kind of brings us to like the modern era of in 2010, NextGen sequencing. And actually, that is my background. I actually worked in biotech, and NextGen sequencing is basically sequencing the human genome, but in a very quick time. And instead of like you sequence in series, you sequence in parallel, and you sequence millions of strands all at the same moment. And it was quite an accomplishment for us in the biotech industry. And that kind of leads me to the like today, we're using this AI technology to create protein 3D models for protein. And that is something that we've never been able to do. And it's something that's going to push us into the next, who knows, next era of human discovery. And if, I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone knows all of these companies, Google, NVIDIA, AWS, or Amazon, IBM. Every single one of these companies is jumping into the biotech space. It's something that's, if you've been in San Francisco, like South San Francisco, you will literally see buildings emerging uh, around the area that you work in. And they're all owned by these major tech companies. Okay, let's see. So the next step, so within all of these tech companies, the big push is for AI. Traditionally, bioinformatics relied on hard-coded rules, rule-based algorithms, and it kind of was a very tedious task. You need to have people basically with PhDs figuring this out. It's very difficult to have someone that can write algorithms and also know the science of what they're doing. And AI kind of just helps utilize that data, and really, you don't really need as much expertise to be able to figure out what that data is saying. And it also makes it very easy to create models based on that data with way more accuracy than before. Or at the very least, it gives like a really good starting point if the model itself is inaccurate. And that brings me to my next point is one of the companies that's really jumping into this space is AlphaFold, which is it's from Google actually. So and I believe it's their DeepMind AI. So that's also brought like I think DeepMind's also responsible for like Gemini as well, which is used on anyone that uses an Android phone. I mean, I don't really use Android, but I think some of us do. Uh, and essentially, AlphaFold takes a protein's amino acid sequence, and through that, it predicts a 3D shape based on the AI's deep learning. It's actually quite insane that it has mapped over 200 million proteins, and it's most likely going to revolutionize the drug industry. It's going to potentially even predict climate and other things based on its modeling capabilities. So the possibilities are really endless for AlphaFold, and it's only really started. I think it only emerged in 2020, where it's been accessible to essentially anybody. And that actually leads me to a demo of AlphaFold. So let's see. All right. This is AlphaFold's website that you don't need any subscription to access. You can just literally go to the link and actually look stuff up. And the first thing I'm going to look up is one of the oldest protein models in existence. And it's called myoglobin. And through here, you can look, and you can also see the confidence rating. Since myoglobin is so old and so well established, it has like a 97% rating. So I'm going to click into it. You can also interact with the structure of this protein. And if you look, zoom in a little bit, you can also click into it and see the exact amino acid that is in this segment of this protein model. And it gives quite a bit of analysis on that protein, which I would surmise that it hasn't really been done before. And it's also, you have access to new proteins that haven't been modeled yet. So which brings me to not this one. Mouthful, KIAA 1109. It's a protein that was basically modeled by AlphaFold, and with no data prior to it. There's no existing structures for this protein. AlphaFold, sorry. It basically created this whole structure. And you can see within the structure areas that it has high confidence in and areas where it has very low confidence, since it's imperfect. The model itself, it's not 100% yet. But I mean, considering that it's still kind of in its infancy, there's a lot of room for improvement. But you can zoom in, you can kind of see like, oh, here, I can see this amino acid, and based on the structure, it knows what's next to it, which I think is pretty unique. Anyways, that concludes the demo portion. So I say it in a little like kind of fancy way, like the next frontier is a journey inward. And I would say like this new space, whereas we all thought like, oh, the next frontier would be like space, or I don't know, into the Mariana Trench, deep into the ocean. I think the next frontier is a journey into our biology, to discover like how everything works, the mechanisms. And there's so much application for that space. Personalized treatment, specific drugs that are catered to specific individuals and not something that could potentially have a crazy amount of side effects. And utilizing that AI is going to definitely help with creating those specific proteins that could be that specific drug for the person and be very individualized. So it's really interesting to see where that leads, but we're still kind of in its infancy. That might be, who knows, 10, 20 years in the future, maybe when we're all old, who knows what that could look like. Yeah, and one other thing to mention is that with these advancements, especially within AI, there could be an emerging of sorts with biotech and tech, where the next job you might be looking for might not just be in tech, it could potentially be in biotech, working on this very technology. So I would say be open to it. And that's definitely a field that I think is worth exploring. I might end up there myself. And of course, with so much like technology, with so much information, you definitely need to protect that information. Privacy is a huge concern, especially like if anyone's had like 23andMe, they just got acquired. That data, who knows what they could do with it, especially if you have an AI driving all of this data. It could be something of huge concern. And another thing is laws tend to fall behind discovery. Like with all this technology, the laws that govern this data might not catch up in time where it can be utilized indiscriminately almost. And another thing to even worry about is preventing genetic discrimination. Like that's something that could definitely happen if, like, say someone knows every single thing about your genetics, whether it's like you could have have a predisposition to like certain disease like cancer, heart disease, diabetes, anything like that. That's not something that you would want people to have knowledge of. Or even like if you like get a job somewhere, it's like, hey, we want a sample to make sure like you're going to be with us for the next however many years. Not that that could happen, but with laws being so slow, you never know. So it's definitely something to consider, especially with that amount of data. And here is my works cited if anyone is interested. I went to several different resources. I use PubMed, I use Nature, a lot of different articles, scientific articles, peer-reviewed articles. So if anyone wants to look through that, feel free to ask me. I will give you these links. And also here, if you want to connect and ask me questions on LinkedIn, here is my information. And an old picture of me in biotech. I was probably, what was I doing? Yeah, I was probably testing the teach point on this liquid handler. All right. And lastly, I would like to thank Seismic again for sponsoring this tech talk. And that will conclude this tech talk.
Chris, thank you so much. That was so cool. I feel like all of our minds are blown. Crazy. Biotech is lucky to have you. All right, everyone, thank you so much for coming out this evening. We hope to see you at the next one.